speaking, describe image guided practice. Let's begin the session. Question number 1. And here's the first image for you. Here's a sample response. The image describes the makeup of the India's estimated energy demand by 2047. India will have a total demand of 18,125 terawatt hours, out of which industry will need the most at about 9,920 terawatt hours. Transport will be the next highest power consumer with a demand of 4,414 terawatt hours, and buildings will need 2,287 terawatt hours. For buildings, most power will go into residential heating and cooling and lighting and appliances. In conclusion, India will require a huge amount of power in the coming decades. So now, first of all, you have to see and understand the type of image. Now, the circle on the left, in a way, it's like a pie chart, because a pie chart also shows how the whole is broken into smaller, how the whole pie is broken into smaller pieces. And the same is here, but yeah, it's somewhat represented differently. And then the other thing is there's also this part of the image in the blue on the right, where the buildings that has been further expanded. So it first tells you about the makeup of total energy demand, and then zooms in on the makeup of power consumption in the building sector. So that's why it's sort of a combined, a hybrid type of an image. And we'll just refer this to the image or the picture in our response. So we say the image describes the makeup of the India's estimated energy demand by two. The next step after understanding the type of image is to notice the title, the keys, and anything other that is written on the image. So the title here is India's projected energy demand by 2047. So that's something in the future. That's why it's a projection. What else is written? It's written industry will consume this many TWH, total energy demand will be this TWH. And then if you look at the bottom, there's a note that TWH stands for terawatt hours. And there's also the source of this information, but you don't need to mention everything in your response. So that's why we don't say describes the estimated energy demand by 2047 and the source is blah, blah, blah. We don't do that. You have to just mention enough that tells us what that image is about, and then move on to the key points. So as we discussed earlier, focus on the key points are the ones that stand out. So what stands out here? Where is the highest consumption? It's in industry. So industry will need the most at 9,920 terawatt hours. So instead of saying TWH, if you note what TWH stands for, you can give a better response. So try to do that. And also when you are speaking these numbers, as I think I mentioned earlier, if it's a quantity that you want to talk about, then try to, and especially if it's a easy to look at and speak. So 9920, we can immediately say it's 9,920. But if it was like 7, 8 digits, then you can, if you want, you can just say the digits. But if it's a quantity, then try to speak it as a number, as one number. So 9,920 terawatt hours. After that, we focus on the next highest, which in this case is transport. And then we can say after transport, there's the buildings. So we focus on buildings because the image itself expands buildings. So that's why we say buildings will need 2,287 terawatt hours. And then a sentence to explain where that power will go in the building sector. For buildings, most power will go into residential heating and cooling and into domestic lighting and appliances. What kind of a general conclusion, what kind of a conclusion can you make here? You can conclude that by 2047, industry will account for more than half of India's total energy demand. That'd be a good conclusion. Or just you can say that India will require a huge amount of power in the coming decades. Because that's still 2 decades ahead. So that's why you can make a conclusion like this. And once you have all of this ready, then simply be alert, be confident, and speak what you have in your mind. All right, the key things to take away from this question is the importance of the text and the keys that tells you what TWH is. So if you see something like that in the image, most likely they will also tell you what it stands for, because this is not a test of your science or any other knowledge. It doesn't require any specialized subject knowledge. So they can't just give you something like TWH and expect everybody to know it. So try to figure out what that is. And the other key point to keep in mind here is how you pronounce the numbers, how you speak out the numbers. So wherever possible, speak it as a full number, as the figure 18,125 or 9,920. Let's go to the second question. Are you ready? Here's the image. Here's a sample response. The bar graph compares the pollution level in various cities of the world against the WHO target of fine particulate concentration. Rawalpindi was the most polluted with a level of more than 100, while Beijing, Cairo, and Mumbai made up the next three with levels between 80 and 60. Sarajevo, San Salvador, and Mexico City were also above WHO level. Moscow, Rome, London, and LA had lower levels though. In conclusion, most cities do not meet the WHO target pollution level. Alright, so the first thing was the image. This is a bar graph. Very simple. And all the bars, there's one type of bar only. And how will you find out what that bar is? By looking at the rest of the image. So first see the title. It's Our Polluted Cities. And you can see immediately the names of the cities, and on the vertical axis you have your annual mean, and at below polluted cities it also says fine particulate concentration. So the pollution measured in terms of fine particulate concentration. So that means it's comparing this pollution level between different cities in the world. And if you want, you can mention the year, because the source tells you that it is 2016. But a more important thing to note here is that dotted line that's going through. So it tells you the WHO target for pollution. So what this means is that it's not just comparing the cities among themselves, but it's also comparing the pollution in each city with against the target that the WHO has set. So all those are important points. And as we discussed, what's the most important? The first thing that we talk about is what stands out. So here, Rawalpindi stands out as the most polluted, so that'll be the one. And there are too many bars. So we said the bars which are kind of similar, we'll club them together. So Beijing, Cairo, Mumbai, they're all well above the pollution level and kind of similar from 80 to 60 range. So we club them together. The next three, Sarajevo, San Salvador, and Mexico, again, they have high levels. They are also above WHO level. And the rest of the cities, we'll just sum them up by saying that, yeah, their pollution levels are lower compared to other cities, but it's still above the WHO target level. So even Los Angeles, it's barely touching the WHO level. So what can be the conclusion here? In conclusion, most major cities in the world are highly polluted. Okay. Or you can say most cities do not meet the WHO standard for pollution. So wherever possible, try to use different words. So instead of saying WHO target, you can say the criteria set by WHO or the level set by WHO. Try to do that. It will make your response better. All right. So take care of all of these things. And as you can see in this sample response, the speaker didn't mention the year. So that is fine. You don't have to cover everything as long as you cover about 3 main points, have a conclusion and have an introduction. Then that is enough. Here's the next image. Let's see the sample response now. If you need more time while doing these questions, you can always pause the lecture video and then you can resume when you're ready. For now, this is the sample response. The table presents the ranking of top notebook brands by the share of worldwide shipments from 2014 to 2016. HP was the number one company in all 3 years, and its share increased steadily from 20.1% to 20.7% from 2014 to 2016, though the total shipments have been decreasing over the years. Lenovo and Dell have maintained their second and third positions, while Asus, Acer, and Apple have been fighting for next three spots. Sony appeared only on 2014 ranking. It can be concluded that the market is majorly dominated by the top 5-6 players. Okay, so that's your response. When you look at this image, the first thing that you notice is that this is a table. And why do we use tables? We use tables when we want to rank something, and in different columns we show different aspects of a certain thing. So to make comparisons, to do rankings, we do that. And the way this is done is there's a ranking, there's one column for each year, and then there's the market share. So you can see that 2014, 15, 16, that means they've shown the market share for each of these years. And you also notice the title. The title tells you that these are the top notebook brands worldwide by shipments from 2014 to 2016. And then there is a consolidated cell at the bottom, row, the last row, which tells us the total shipments in that year. And the unit is M. So M most likely stands for million. So in 2014, the total shipments were 175.5 million. In 2015, 164.4. And in 2016, 159.2. All right. So that's all the key information that you have here. Most of these images, when you see graphs, tables, different types of graphs, charts, they pretty much do the same thing. They're comparing, they're doing different kinds of comparisons. The comparisons can be of one thing, how it performed across the years or across some other criteria, or it can be a number of different factors, different things. For example, here different companies, how they competed against each other, and also from one year to another. So at the simple level, you will have just one thing. For example, you might just have companies and their market shares in 1 year. Then you just compare, then it's just a comparison between the companies. But at a slightly higher level, you'll also see the comparison or the trend between years. To get as many marks as possible, the full marks, you must capture all these aspects. So there should be a sentence which of course tells us about how much market share these companies have compared to each other. But then there should also be a sentence or two which talk about this market share between years. So that's what's done here. The first thing, the table presents the rankings. Another way of saying this would be the table compares the share of top notebook brands by their worldwide shipments from 2014 to 2016. So I would actually say that using words like comparison or showing the trend, that is better because that actually indicates that you understood what the intent is. And the intent here is to do the comparison. We have discussed before, we first focus on the share at the highest. So the highest here is HP. So we have a sentence for HP and how it has gone from 14 to 2016. And then we sort of club the next three, Lenovo, Dell, Asus, that they maintain the next spots. Another thing that you could have mentioned that could, this response could have covered and it would have been better, that Lenovo has shown a good increase from 2014 to 2016. And in 2016, it is very close to HP's share. So in 2016, only there are two companies which have 20% and above share. All of the smaller companies, we have clubbed them together. For example, Acer, Apple, etc. And the conclusion here is that market is majorly dominated by the top 5, 6 brands. Actually, you can even say by the top 3 brands account for more than 50% of the market share. Yeah, that would also be a good conclusion. Or you can say it can be concluded that a number of companies have a wide variety of market share. This is a generic statement because you're sort of just saying that what's there in the table, but that would also be a reasonable conclusion if you can't think of anything else. All right, so that's what we have. And another point to note, if you look at Sony, they only appeared in 2014. So that's something which stands out in the table, and therefore we've also mentioned that Sony appeared only on 2014 ranking. So keep an eye out for, as I said, things that stick out. So the highest, the lowest, something which is very different from the others. As in this case, Sony, that means after 2014, it had no market share or it wasn't available. They stopped production of notebooks. So keep an eye on those kind of things which stand out. If you are able to do that, then you will definitely get 100% marks on content. And after that, all you have to do is be confident because you have got the best content and then speak it with good pronunciation and fluency. Let's look at the final question in this session. Here's your image. Let's see the response now. The pie chart shows the areas that young adults prefer for their tertiary education. The biggest percentage of 23 go to study business, administration, and law, while 16% prefer engineering, manufacturing, and construction. Health and welfare, arts, social sciences, education all account for between 9 and 13% each. IT and natural sciences are other important areas. It can be concluded that business and engineering offer most promising careers and therefore attract the largest number of adult students. The first thing was the type of image. It's a pie chart, as we can see in the response. Now, this is like a pie chart, but most of us are used to seeing pie charts in the standard form, just a circle and divided into pies. This is, you can say, a more stylish pie chart. So if you see any image like this, you can use the general term infographic for that. Okay. So sometimes they can combine a couple of these images or style them in a way that is different from the traditional way in which we see charts or graphs. So you can always use the general term infographic. So the pie chart or the infographic shows the areas that young adults prefer for the tertiary education. And once you have understood the type of image, then you look at the title. So the title is, what do young adults study? And below that, you can see by field of study and average for OECD countries, etc. So you can include all of those points, or you can only include some of those. And then look at the different paths. Different colors means different areas of study, and the numbers show their percentage, that how many young adults go to study that. And as always, we start with the highest, and then the next highest, we cover them, and the smaller ones or the similar ones, we club them together. And in the end, you can make a conclusion. So here we have made a conclusion by seeing that The largest number go to study business, administration, and law. We concluded that probably it offers that business and the engineering, which attract most students, they offer most promising careers. So we concluded, and that's a good conclusion. Otherwise, you can say that it can be concluded that administration and law is the most popular field of study for young adults in OECD countries. So you can see the conclusion is basically, again, you summarize one of the overall idea, and if possible, you try to make it specific. You try to talk about something which is not right there on the image. So in this case, there's nothing that says that these fields of study, they offer promising careers, but we understood that relation, that if most students want to study this, then most likely it is because it offers better jobs, more promising careers, and we included that in our conclusion. But again, it's not necessary that you have to do that, as long as you make some conclusion, some logical conclusion, even if it's a generic statement. All right. Remember to practice on your own in the test software. That's most important.